Hello, everyone. This is Cody Lee of BlackCatBooks.org, author of I, the Dragon, Cruel and Beautiful Rabbit Hole, Lore and Fray, and the upcoming Jaw of the Dragon. Well, it seems that Microsoft has finally decided to bite the bullet. They are raising game prices from $60 to $70, $69.99. Holy crap. I remember when I was a kid being upset at new games going up to $60. I remember that being a big deal for me. Being poor, couldn't even afford games at $50. I was like buying used shit at GameStop like near constantly. Like I didn't buy new games ever growing up. And seeing game prices rise again when people are having problems like getting basic stuff paid for, and like the prices for everything else is going up, like this is, I think, a very, very poor move on Microsoft's part. I do think this is going to blow up in their faces, and I think it is going to like lead people away from supporting Microsoft in the future. I think people will go for the more affordable option of Nintendo Switch and sticking with like these more affordable 50 $60 games. And you know there are a lot of cheaper, more affordable games available on Nintendo hardware. Like there are a lot of things you could pick up on Nintendo Switch right now that's considerably more affordable than a $70 game on an expensive piece of plastic. That is interesting, actually, is that in the modern era it is viable to buy a Nintendo Switch, get an online subscription for like $50, and to then spend that like period of time playing like game trials and playing a Nintendo Switch Online, like without ever actually buying a physical game. Like in theory, that's something you could do if you were like absolutely, absolutely poor, like I was, right? And of course you have like other options. You have like, things like that. I think generally speaking, like when it comes to like, people who are struggling, well, first of all, you shouldn't be buying video games anyway. But if you do, you would look to getting a Switch. It's more games for a considerably less price. Now, why has Microsoft decided to do this other than like the fact that Joe Biden has ruined the economy? Well, what I think they're trying to do in this move is trying to push more people to subscribe to Game Pass, because now that the shilling campaign is over, now that the influencers have failed to manipulate the audience in any meaningful capacity, Game Pass subscriptions have stalled. They've stopped growing, and in fact, there are a number of people like myself who have unsubbed from the service because it is unsatisfactory for a wide range of reasons. I had problems with the library. I had problems with, just just the way the system worked, the update schedule. Like Nintendo Switch Online is just objectively superior. Like anyone who has actually tried both would have told you that. But Nintendo Switch Online got hit with a massive hate campaign while Game Pass was shilled, even though that like Nintendo Switch Online is like far more successful, far more popular, and honestly is going to last a lot longer than Game Pass is. I've said this in the past, but I think Game Pass is going to be the end of Xbox. I think what they're doing is unsustainable. They're trying to get all these companies on board with this subscription model, but games are leaving too quickly for gamers to discover them. And in fact, like a lot of this stuff, specifically the indie games or stuff like Yakuza, they don't seem to be picking up an audience at all. That's the thing about Game Pass, is that like if you play a game on Game Pass and it goes offline, you're gonna have to pay for it if you want to finish it. All right, like I had this experience with The Messenger. This is a problem I had with Game Pass, is that like I was doing a playthrough of The Messenger, a classic indie game that I already owned on Nintendo Switch. I just downloaded it on Xbox Game Pass, started playing it, to stream it to my audience, because The Messenger is a great indie game. So like I get about halfway through it, and what happens? Before I can actually finish it, the game leaves the service. And as a result, like in order to finish it, a game I already own, I have to buy it on I have to buy it on the Xbox. And like of course, like in theory I could have waited until it went on the service again, or that they, or like just bought it while it was on sale, but like why would I bother? That's the thing about Game Pass. Like why am I limited to like a selection of games? Why am I not like able to play every single release on Xbox? Like why exactly is this structured the way it is? And the reason they have to do it this way is that like Microsoft has to pay these companies in order to have these games on there, because a lot of this stuff it would never, a lot of players on Xbox would never pay for any of this stuff otherwise, like, and they're losing out on sales by having their games on Game Pass, and it's like it's a massive trade-off. Like if you have it on the service, it might get noticed, but people aren't actually going to pay for it. Like again, Game Pass, I think the whole games uh, the whole subscription service thing, like it's just not viable, honestly, in this format. Like Nintendo seems to have like a better understanding of how this should work. People don't talk about this, but Nintendo Switch Online games do not leave the service. I think what Nintendo is doing is they probably set up a contract with these companies for these all of these games to last like a significantly long time. So they have the rights to have all of these games on the service for like a set period of time, probably like 10 years or something like that. And then like, as they gradually roll these out, and they start paying like the renewal fees, like eventually we're going to reach the point where we essentially see every single Nintendo game ever released on Nintendo Switch Online simultaneously. And then like they won't be paying all the renewal fees at once, it'll be sustainable to like pay for the service, and like it's just up there perpetually, and you can just play whatever Nintendo game you want whenever you want from all these companies. Anything that's ever released on a Nintendo piece of hardware, it'll be available on Nintendo Switch Online in some capacity. We're already seeing like situations like Castlevania Bloodlines being released on the Sega Genesis Sega Genesis app when like it was released in the Castlevania collection. Like that was a meme that a lot of people came up with like initially, is that like why would I play this when it's already available in the connection? Well, you won't need the collection going forward. You can just pay the subscription fee and get more games. It's like it's the Nintendo Switch Online version is just objectively superior to Game Pass, and like you just don't see anyone other than me talk about it. It's embarrassing. I really wonder how much longer Microsoft and Sony can keep doing this. Sony in particular seems to have like taken a huge blow this generation. They've lost all their credibility. They have like that. They have Neil Druckmann, ruining Naughty Dog. You have like their terrible you have their terrible management who are handling the brand as a whole. You have like all these IPs just going down the drain. Like the third party partnerships they've had since the beginning are beginning to fall apart, or have been falling apart since the PS3 era. Final Fantasy chief among them. Metal Gear is dead. Like what exactly do they have to keep people interested in the foreseeable future? Like when I see people like praise God of War, it feels like a cope to me. It really does feel like there's no real enthusiasm for games like that, or Horizon Forbidden West, or Stray, or like any other like major PlayStation game this gen. It feels like PlayStation fans have been like left out in the cold, like freezing and starving to death, like I was when I was 8 years old. Like that is the situation for the PlayStation audience, is that they they are starving for content, and they're not getting it. They're never going to come close to getting it, and yet they still don't want to admit that there's something wrong with their console of choice. They're not even considering moving on to Xbox or Nintendo or PC. They're just going to keep consuming PlayStation products. Like how viable of an audience is that really? Like how much longer do you expect the company to stay afloat with an audience like that? Like where's the actual enthusiasm for the games? Like you can't prop yourself up on like blind fanboyism like from the 90s. Like it's just not sustainable. And the only reason PlayStation has like lasted this long, or more specifically, the only reason it was relevant to begin with, was the fact that it was a massive conglomerate, right? Same with Microsoft. Like they simply cannot compete with Nintendo in their sphere, and they never have been able to. Like they've had to rely on like all these gimmicks, DVD players, FMV, online play, paying off third-party developers to support their hardware. They've had to do pull all these stunts to keep like the general public from realizing that Nintendo is and always has been superior. And now the cracks are starting to show. Now I think like even normies are beginning to realize that like, oh wait, Switch, it's more affordable. It has more going for it. You don't have to pay $70 for a game. And I want to play Zelda. So you're going to see more and more normal people picking up Zelda, picking up Switches, picking up Nintendo products in general. And unlike the distant past where people would complain constantly about like, oh, there's nothing to play. Like the Switch has a huge backlog of games that new players can get into, like right off the bat. Like there's functionally no way that that uh that the industry can keep downplaying the Nintendo the way they have been doing. And I think that's a major reason why we're going into Game Award season with like no real like enthusiasm, because like these people who have spent their entire careers trying to ruin Nintendo kind of know it's over. We're kind of reaching that point where their entire industry like of like promoting bad games and convincing you that like, oh, you have to get excited for the next thing. Like it's all going to fall apart. And I think $70 games is going to be a big deal, a big part of that. Like normal audiences, like regular players, are not going to want to pay $70 for a new Call of Duty.